Hey, my name is Chelsea Bumagen. Today is January 13th, 2009, and I'm here with Mary and Don Woodbury. First off, Don, can you tell me what your birthday is, when you were born?
June 28th, 13.
13, and where were you born?
Springfield, Vermont.
Okay. And how did you get into the military? Were you drafted or did you volunteer?
I was drafted.
You were drafted.
Shall I tell her who? By whom?
By her?
Yeah.
Is that how you guys met?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
And
She sent me a notice. And I dragged my feet all the way to the
draft board.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't really wait to be drafted. He did his best to get in to enlist, but he wasn't able to because he was classified limited service due to his poor vision.
Oh, okay.
And so he had to wait it out.
Okay.
Until finally they called him his age.
So how did you get into the interviewing part of it? Were you asked to interview? Or
I was doing that before I got in.
You were.
I worked in a machine shop and interviewed the potential employees.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And where were you during the war?
Well, I went down to the where was it? Some I don't know.
Well, you were in this country for
Yeah,
a while.
for a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
More than
Oh, I
a month.
guess it was more than that, yeah. And
Let's see, you went in August of 43.
I believe so.
Yeah, we got married in February 43. So you went in August of 43.
Right.
And you were in this country until sometime the next summer.
We went around, there were a bunch of us, about 6 guys. We interviewed the old establishment, the Army organizations, and interviewed all the guys. Some of them had been there for 15, 20 years. And what they were doing is finding out who was important, who should stay, and who should they close up the camp and send everybody overseas.
Okay.
We weren't very welcome.
That's unfortunate. Okay, so you guys said that you were married before you went overseas.
Yeah.
So what was it like to have him be overseas? Did you worry about him when he was over there?
Of course I worried
You
about
did,
it.
of course. Were you able to talk to her when she was back at home, or was it difficult to communicate?
Oh, very, heavens, it would be weeks before we get
Weeks?
letters.
Really?
There was no instant
Right.
communication the way there is today.
Yeah.
We'd wait weeks for letters. And he went in, with the time he was going over, there were submarines.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very dangerous crossing. And he spent time in England.
Yeah.
I don't know, what'd you do in England?
We interviewed guys that came in, or fellas that coming from the hospital, or were AWOL and got caught. We interviewed them and got their records up to date, and then sent them off to their outfit.
Okay. So you were in England for most of the time, or?
Quite a long while.
I know she mentioned to me on the phone that you were in France. For a while.
We went to Paris from there.
Mm-hmm.
After Paris got liberated.
Yeah.
Really?
That was a rough stretch.
France was liberated, then
Then they sent you over there.
Yeah.
Okay. So since you were there before December of 43, you were overseas when the Battle of the Bulge was going on, correct?
Yeah.
Did you interview any soldiers who fought in that battle?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the
Well,
stories?
I don't know about particular that battle,
Mm-hmm.
but I do remember when the planes had come in all shot up. We interviewed the guys that were survivors.
remember anything that was said to you in particular during the interview? Anything that has stuck in your mind for forever that you'll never forget?
Well, I can remember, I was, I kind of had the idea that I was going to be a tail gunner. I don't know why. And after I got to talking with some of these guys, survivors of those things, I'm glad I didn't make it. Because they kept, one guy I remember said, as soon as those planes come in, we get the hoses out the blood out of the back gunner, the rear gunner, because he was the first one to get it. I said, oh boy, I'm glad I didn't make it.
Yeah, well, I can understand.
That was before he went into service. What he wanted to do was get in the Air Force and become a tail gunner.
Well, I bet after seeing that you were glad that you weren't.
Right.
Glad you weren't sitting in that spot. My next question, I have such a huge list of questions. So did you have friends that you were with overseas?
Oh yeah.
Your buddies?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you guys talk about while you were over there? What was the conversation like?
There's a jeweler's assistant. He worked as a jeweler, and together we made bracelets. And he made them and I sold them. And we made money. We should have incorporated or something. Should have got some help.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could sell him in about 10 minutes.
Really?
What he could make during the day. So it wasn't black market, but because we bought all our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bracelets were made out of English coins.
Yeah, and the pips, what they call the pips, they were decorations.
Right.
Yeah. I remember we went to Birmingham to get some supplies. We needed some chain. And we saw a place and it was wholesale only. Mm-hmm. And there in one corner of a window was chain, just what we needed. So we barged ourselves in and the guy said, this is nothing but wholesale. No, nothing but wholesale. Well, I said, how much you gotta have? Well, he wouldn't answer that. I said, well, we'll take what you got. And we bought about, I don't know how many pounds we bought, but we bought it all.
Well, when she asked you if you had any particular friends, who was it?
Did so long ago, I forgot what his name is. No, I don't know. I can't.
Mert?
Yeah, Mert something.
Mert.
He was wasn't he from out west?
Yeah,
he was
Omaha.
a Mormon, wasn't he?
Huh?
He wasn't a Mormon, wasn't he a
No,
Mormon?
no, that was one of the other kids.
Another friend that was,
Yeah. I remember the Mormon, if you wanted some money, you wanted to go someplace, he'd lend you the money, as long as you didn't spend it on booze or something like that. And I never had to borrow because I had so much money.
From selling your bracelets? Well, that must have been good. Did you keep in touch with your friends that you were overseas with for a while when you got back?
Well, we took a discharge in Paris and went to where we took the boat. And I haven't seen them since. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. Those guys from Massachusetts came up over the weekend to see us. I forgot what their names were, but
That's okay.
yeah.
the point is, he really never kept in
Never
touch with them through the years or anything.
No.
It was sort of good and off.
So when you were interviewing, did you see any of the commanders? Did you interview any of them?
Officers, the officers?
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
No, you didn't.
Usually, guys that coming through there, if they had a particular officer, they'd request, can we see Dr. Lee or Dr. this or Dr. that one? they had it figured out.
So you mainly interviewed men that were on their way in and on their way out, right?
Yeah.
Were you interviewing the same people? Like, did you keep track of who you interviewed,
Oh,
or was it
no,
just whoever passed through?
No, they'd come through and then that was the last we'd see them.
That was the last year.
Yeah.
Did you ever interview anybody twice on their way in and on their way out that you recall?
No,
No.
no. No, not anybody else.
And most of them who were on their way out, was their time of service just over, or were they?
Yeah, right,
Okay,
right.
so you never interviewed any of the people who had like shell shock or combat fatigue or anything?
Yeah, we
You
had
did?
some, yeah, I don't know why we weren't doctors for goodness sake, but we talked to them to see if they were.
You had to decide where they would go.
Oh, no, we didn't decide where they went. They already knew their outfit.
They knew where they were going?
Yeah, they just didn't have their records for them, that's all.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. So, you were sent to Paris after Paris was liberated, correct?
Yeah.
After France was liberated?
Yeah.
Okay. What was it like to be over there after that had happened? Was the atmosphere any different from before that, or?
I think the natives were not as friendly when a lot of them were jealous because we had food, we had lots of stuff, and all kinds of money, that was the thing. I think they were paid, everybody was paid too darn much. So,
Were the soldiers happy that, that it was finally a little less that they would have to, worry about, that they had
everybody
success
was
there?
joyous, everybody liked that idea.
Yeah.
Especially when the Pacific declared over with, that was great, because everybody a little bit worried about whether to get shipped over
To the Pacific.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were over there when the Pacific was going on also?
Oh, sure.
Not just Europe?
Oh, yeah.
They both were on the same
Yeah.
time. No,
But I knew that the Germans had surrendered before
Yeah,
before the
right.
Japanese had, so.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. So, I know that a lot of people who had contact with the war had, certain feelings about Germans or Japanese. Did you have any feelings about them due to what was going on with the war, or?
No, I don't think it is.
No.
No, I don't think I felt that way. Everybody was in it was bad times for everybody. The guys you'd meet in England, for example, fellas, something's wrong with them, otherwise they'd be in service.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were all in service, except those that were unable to make it.
Okay. So did a lot of people tell you maybe about their feelings towards the enemy? They had strong dislike or anything? Did you ever
No.
hear?
Generally, the people in England were not friendly because we were taking up drinking their booze and going with the girls and all that stuff. They didn't like that. And I don't blame them.
Okay.
But that wasn't the same in Paris because we didn't see as many natives around. There were
do you remember where you were when FDR died? When President Roosevelt died?
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Do you remember it happening? Do you remember when you found out about it?
Didn't affect me at all.
It didn't affect you?
No. If I remember it, I didn't know what was going on. Didn't give a damn, really.
When did he die? third term,
Yeah.
And then Truman took over,
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Were any of the soldiers that you were nearby worried about how a new president would handle things with the war?
Never discussed it.
Never discussed it. It just kind of happened and you just let it go?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
How about you? How did you feel about it when FDR died? Did it affect you at all, or did you just kind of feel the same way?
Well,
Who took
no,
over?
I guess not.
Truman.
Who?
Truman?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Truman took over.
Yeah, that's right.
I probably felt sorry because he had been greatly admired and obviously when elected to a third term, why, people would have been, everybody would have been sorry.
Yeah.
Probably left us kind of wondering how Truman was going to do.
Exactly.
He turned out to be fine as any of them, I guess.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So I know you said that she told me how she felt when you were overseas. What about the rest of your family? Were they aware of where you were and what you were doing when you were overseas, or?
Well, I had 3 brothers, and one of them was in the Navy. The other 2 I...
2 older brothers were married and had
Yeah.
families.
Sure.
And they knew through me, and his mother was living at that time,
Yeah.
so,
And they were obviously worried about you too over there, right?
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
I'm sure his mother was.
I'm sure. Mothers are always worried.
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm sure they both were. So since you told me about, the blood in the planes, and you've seen like the hard parts of the war firsthand, do you find it hard to watch any documentaries on the war? Do you feel like they change it up any and don't give it justice? Or?
No, I don't feel that way. I don't.
Do you watch them?
Sure.
And do you have fond memories from your service? Is there any, do you have any good memories from it?
Glad to get out of it.
Glad to get out of it.
Yeah. If I went back in, I would do it differently. I would hire a couple of guys to work for me, and I'd make some money, big money.
Making bracelets or doing other
Making
things?
bracelets. Well, we were in other business. We used to buy bicycles and rent them and or sell them. That was it. We bought it for $10 from the civilians, and we resold them for 20. And if they bring the things back, we give them $10 back. I remember that part.
So you had your own little business going.
These guys were, they were coming from the fighting and waiting to get shipped home. So they were sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes even 3-4 weeks. But they'd leave. In the meantime, they bought my bracelets, they rented my bikes.
So that worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah.
You obviously didn't interview all the time.
Oh, Lord, no. We had it so easy, At one time, there were 3 of us, I remember, and 2 guys were on duty. Well, one guy got the day off, so you had every 3rd day off.
Every Thursday. That's not too bad.
Well, it's darn good.
Yeah. So you got to have a little bit of, fun while you're over there.
Oh, sure, that was great.
Yeah. That's so funny.
I'm afraid we haven't given you much information on.
You didn't know how you got into the archery.
What?
You didn't say anything about getting into the archery.
No.
The archery.
Yeah, they always had, after the war was over with, then bought out like bows and arrows for guys, and baseball bats, and stuff like that. You know, I can remember, I remember hunting rabbits or things. Oh, yeah, that's right, they did.
You had a competition.
Yeah, well, I was kinda, I had lots of practice time. So when they had the final big shootout, there was a guy from Texas, an officer, and another guy. The guy from Texas had been right up to the last minute, so he was rusty, he didn't shoot worth a damn. The other guy had phosphorus burns on his hand, and he couldn't. And so I beat him, and so I was what they call it, the archer of the, that was in England, yeah, that was in England.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to go to Paris, join some other guys there, and we were on a tour, the outfits
With bow and arrow.
and I got there, I landed, and somebody came up to me and said, your outfit has just moved out, get back in, because you're going back to England. Big deal.
That was the end of that.
Yeah, that was the end of that.
But you had some fun along the
Yeah,
way.
oh, yeah.
Till it was over.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you explain that your outfit was under the Adjutant General's
No,
department?
it was, I don't know what the story was. They made it up, they had 12 guys, GIs, and 3 officers. And we did projects that didn't require a big outfit. Just those outfits for example, we interviewed truck drivers who had got bombed or something because they didn't have their truck and they didn't have their truck full of blankets, for example. Well, they were wealthy. They came because they had a place on the Riviera. And if you had a place, if you had a job, you could stay on the continent. But otherwise, you couldn't stay. And so when we found a guy that said he'd had an outfit down there, bought a, ritzy hotel or something, then we'd refer them to the officers who would check it out. They'd go to the Riviera and check out, see if they did own something. And if they did, well, they got a discharge. But if they didn't, back over there. Most of those guys were the colored truck, because most of them were truck drivers, were his colored. And they were wealthy men.
They were.
Wealthy.
Okay. I think I'm gonna ask you some questions. I think it's your turn. So, where and when were you born?
I was born in Brattleboro, Vermont on August 28, 1918.
And did you live in Vermont all through the war? Or?
Yeah.
And what exactly was your job during the war?
Beg your pardon?
What was your job during the war?
My first job out of college was with the government in selective service system.
Can you explain a little more?
That was 1940, right after, I graduated in 1940. In June, I took a job with the government in the fall. I think it was September, October. And the war had already, Pearl Harbor was
Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941.
1941, yeah. But they were, the selective service system had been set up and was starting to draft people into the service.
So So they were drafting before Pearl Harbor was even hit?
What?
They were drafting before Pearl Harbor was even hit?
Well, I don't know how many were being drafted. And, gosh. I worked as an assistant. When I first got the job, I was an assistant. And we were setting up, well, every man had to register, you see.
Okay.
Every male had to be registered from 18 to 35,
Okay.
I believe it was. And that was setting up that system. It took those months, you know. In Vermont, we are Vermonters, you know. And in Vermont, there were 14 what they call local boards. And so they had somebody who had to run a local board in each county. And this, I remember I worked for the wife of the head of the employment service. At first, and mostly typing and setting up a record for each guy.
Okay.
Then, of course, the Pearl Harbor, we were really in business.
Oh, yeah.
And then started to be drafted. They were drafted, let's see now, according, they all had numbers. They were, at first they had numbers. You know, I was with selective service clear up to 1973
Really?
through the several wars.
Mm-hmm.
And it was different each time,
Each
and that's
time.
why I'm so confused.
Oh, that's fine.
Really can't. But I think they all had numbers, and when their number was called,
He came and reported to you
yeah.
at the office.
And of course we did all the office work and arranged for them to have physical exams and the local boards, you had to send them a questionnaire, and the questionnaire would come back and the local board would decide whether or not
Whether or not to draft them.
whether they were eligible to be called.
Okay.
And there would be students, they'd have to classify them. And I remember if a guy got a 1A, he was going to go in. Class 2 was students. They'd get, they were in college, or they'd have to be college age. They were usually deferred until they finished. If they quit, right, they had to notify. They couldn't make a move without notifying the draft board.
Okay.
And their address, we had to know every minute where they were. And so, I mean, that took a lot of office work
Right.
and typing and setting up records, and there weren't any computers and nothing. It was instant.
Yeah.
All I did, remember files and files and files. I used to sit in a room surrounded by these 4-drawer files,
Oh
on
my.
3 walls.
Right.
But
Then you had meetings about everything.
then what?
You had meetings.
Yes, the board would meet. It was our job to put the information in front of that board.
The board consisted of local guys
Yeah.
in each area, like you know, a lot of,
Usually it would be prominent
yeah.
citizens in each town, or from, they gave the local board was 5 members, I think, and they come from various towns within the county, you see. And I remember the one from our town was the head of the bank, and another, I had in another town, he was
And the green store, remember that fellow from Ludlow?
yeah,
Yeah,
Tom Cochran.
the Tom,
Yeah, and Roy was under the stuff was, I can't
He was
remember,
retired, I think.
but they were well known and well thought of leading citizens, shall we say, and they brought up various viewpoints, or, you know, into together, and their experiences and their knowledge of the town and the area and the families, and because most every man knew most every family in their under their jurisdiction, but they would decide whether he would go in, or whether he'd be deferred, or whether he be exempt. And if the man presented evidence to show that he was unable physically, then he'd go to a class called 4F. 4F. But we had these married men who were class 3, students of class 2, as far as it went, 4F. And usually they wouldn't get a 4F until after they'd had a physical. But of course there were cases where obviously he was already on crutches or in a wheelchair, or minus a limb or something like that, where you and presented a doctor's certificate and so on, so you wouldn't have to send them. But the students would get deferred for just a certain period, and then it would be reviewed again and continued. Hadn't begun yet.
Okay.
But anyway, that's sort of how it went. And it wasn't, I had nothing to do with you go in or you don't go in. It was, all I had to do was
Type it up and
type
type it
in the office work, and all the clerical work, second. And gradually, I was asked to go. The wife of the person I worked for got through, she got through, and I took over. And after a while, a year or so, that way, they asked me to go to another local board and straighten the person out, because her office was a mess there. Some of those jobs went to rather unqualified people at the point. And ultimately, I ended up with the state headquarters in Appleyard, supervising all the other boards.
So you were, as a supervisor, you were just keeping track of every board, basically making sure that all the work was getting done? That was basically your
Yeah,
job?
and that they were going by the rules and regulations of
Okay.
performance.
Alright. So what town did you start working in again?
Well, I started working in Springfield, Vermont, which was his hometown. And then I moved to Woodstock. There were 2 boards in Windsor County. So I went to Woodstock. They transferred me, I think, because they were trying me out for the job of supervising. So I moved there.
Come on in, come on in.
No,
We can go, we can,
You're doing this, yeah, they have a happy hour here,
yeah.
but I don't,
but it's time. If we'd like to continue, we can go in the next room.
Okay, yeah, if you wanted
And then one upstairs, which is all paperback, and then one over in the terrace.
to review. I know you mentioned that when Pearl Harbor hit, we got really busy. Do you remember where you were when Pearl Harbor was attacked and what went through
I
your mind?
remember I was visiting my parents in Brownborough
Okay.
when it happened.
I remember, I thought, well,
Yeah, where were you also?
who would you go to, this wouldn't last long, a couple of months would be over with.
That's what you thought? Yeah.
I was mistaken.
I really felt shocked,
But,
and I suppose
that
everybody
they
did.
do something like that,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Where were you when Pearl Harbor was attacked? Do you remember?
I was in Springfield working,
You were?
and I hadn't got in yet.
Okay. And what did you think? I mean, you said you were shocked, but he said that he thought it would be over within a few months, no big deal.
Yeah.
Did you think it was anything to be worried about, or?
Well, no, I just thought that, boy, we'll be getting busy.
That's also you thought it was the business part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's understandable. So, okay. So, other than working for the selective service, what was it like to just be on the home front during the war? I mean, my grandmother used to tell me that she would remember air raid drills, and she was actually on the bridge in Glen Falls once when an air raid drill happened, and she had to run and get somewhere. Do you remember anything like that happening? Or no?
Mhm.
Nothing.
No.
Okay. Did you have any, other than Don, did you have any other friends or family members who were fighting in the war?
Oh, yes. I had a brother who was a pilot, and he flew the hump, what they flew the hump over
Into China.
China, India, somewhere through there. And my other brother was married, had a family. My sister's husband was in the service, and he was in a lot more action than you
Oh,
were.
yeah, combat
Yeah.
medic,
He's a
That's
medic.
what he was, yeah.
yeah, that was a rough deal.
And he was got all through the war and waiting to come home. No more fighting and everything. Waiting to come home. And walking down going to mail a letter to my sister, walking down the street, and a Jeep came along and wanted a ride, so he hopped on, and they went along, and someone came out, and another vehicle came out from the other side, crashed, and broke his legs,
Oh, wow.
and one of the legs never recovered. He had a hard time walking
Yeah.
the rest of his life. But he wasn't injured in the war. It
Yeah.
was so ironic.
Right.
But they had a family of 4 children. He lived to be.
I don't know how. I can't
Remember.
say.
But he's been gone quite a while.
Okay.
Been gone
Ever since I got out and tried to forget it,
I know it.
so,
Yeah.
We, of course, we had a child, a one and only child, a daughter born in the 25th of November, 1944. And it was one happy day when Daddy came home.
Right. So you started off by yourself with your daughter because he was overseas, right?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
She was over a year old when I saw her first.
Wow.
And she was about 14 months.
Yeah.
And she was just at the age where she was walking and could reach up to the wash basin in the bathroom. And he, of course, wasn't used to babies or children. So when he first came home, he was shaving one day and she's standing watching him, you know, and laid his razor down.
Oh.
Left it. So she was going to mimic him.
Oh boy. Oh, poor thing.
He had to learn the hard way.
Oh, that's okay. Everybody has to learn.
But, of course, I talked to her about Daddy forever.
Right.
So,
I can remember the buzz bombs that came over toward London. We were stationed just above London. And sometimes they'd fall short, sometimes they'd go long. You could hear them buzzing, put, and they would stop. And then they'd come down like that. We never got a bomb in the area, but we saw them every once in a while. They laying down in the fields and stuff like that.
you mentioned what your grandmother said. I don't understand that at all. I'm sure it wasn't a later war, maybe.
I think she said when she was...
Because if there would be any town subject to something like that, Springfield was one of them. It had 3-4 machine tool shops that were building machines. They were very, very busy.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of them got deferred for just working in those shops because what they produced was so important. And with a town with 3 or 4 big, all this machine tool, they call it machine tool industry, would certainly be one that would be a target. But it was never anything like that here in this country.
No. They bombed Alaska, and they sent a couple of them into California. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, thank God it's over with.
Right. Was that your feeling when you were finally through with it?
Happy to get out of my uniform and burn the thing.
What was it like when you finally got to see your wife and your daughter again?
It was nice. It was great.
Yeah. I imagine it was probably the best feeling in the world.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to write every day. Every day we send what they call them, letters. What the devil they call
Email.
Email.
No.
No, that wasn't it.
That's a modern term.
I don't know.
That's okay.
You're trying to drag things up that have been forgotten a long while ago.
I know.
Well, I'm glad to hear about it.
Hard to remember.
Well, that's okay. I got a lot of great information.
Well, he's 95 and a half. I'm 90. That's a lot of years ago.
Of course.
We
Yeah.
were.
Somebody having a birthday.
Somebody is having a birthday.
The party's picking up there.
Alrighty, well, I think that about does it for my interview. Thank you guys so much for contributing and
Oh.
sharing your stories. It was really excellent to hear.
I have a niece by the name of Chelsea.
Do ya?
Yep.
Nice.
It's a
Well,
pretty name.
thank you very much. Alright, well, thank you guys again. I won't keep you from the birthday celebration or anything, but thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.